Sorry about the delay, things happen. Ended up procrastinating for over a week, but now it's finished. Sorry for the wait. Now back to how not to disrespect your audience. I could have done a magic system episode. I could have delved into world building, how to make believable characters. But no, we have to talk about the space cats that crashed and burned onto the internet and are forever the example of how not to do certain kinds of plot points. Ugh. Okay, how do we start shifting through the ash pit of this fanbase? Say what you will about the Avatar fandom, at least people like aspects of Legend of Korra and the new media like the novels or comics, even if they do cause fissures. Nothing will compare to the Grand Canyons of divide that Voltron has caused. Voltron, what can you say about this thing? That has been talked about from 30-minute videos to 3 hours. And that should tell you all you need to know about what went wrong. A nosedive of bad decisions and lack of planning caused a death spiral of quality that drained the fandom, basically made everyone look like an idiot, and ended up with only 3 things left: hatred, disappointment, and regret. Now, as always, we shall define our terms and definitions. Queerbaiting is a term that's been popularized ever since networks have been trying to have a gay character without actually having one, or at least trying to bait the LGBT community into watching whatever they're putting on. And trust me, it's still somewhat alive and well. Queerbaiting is when a character is teased to be queer or otherwise not straight or at least trans, but never outright stated. This practice came from the fact media only relatively recently was allowed to actually show it, or more like they can actually make a bit of a profit and were allowed a degree of a spine. After a while, people called people out who still did this practice as basically just trying to bait them. And, well, it eventually led to parts of the animation media to be also overtaken by this trend. Voltron, the Netflix version, came out around a time when more diverse characters were being put on screen more, with Voltron giving us a darker skinned Allura, a Cuban Lance, and Pidge, just Pidge, never change. And then Shiro. If you know anything about this version of Voltron, you know Shiro's at the center of some of its nastier qualities. Damn it, Shiro, why couldn't you stick the landing? The next term we're going to discuss is burying gays. It's a trope where a character dies after the defining character trait of being gay is revealed. The lazy man's way of having a gay character, but not really having a gay character, and getting easy brownie points and sad points from the audience for basically doing the bare minimum. Now that we have some terms, let's put them to use about how this show got its infamous moniker. The fandom is magnanimous in saying that the show became what started as a space opera about found family to that of tragedy and losing your family. If you don't know about the show, Voltron essentially is the story about a group of kids teaming up to defeat an evil space empire for conquering the universe, very much Star Wars and any other space epic where a team of heroes learns to act as a family. Simple story, simple plot points, easy to follow character motivations and trajectory for how they will develop. But here's the question: where the hell did it go wrong? Which I know for sure is why you're actually watching this. Well, that is a loaded and very complicated question. Enough problems to make hour-long essays on it if you're really looking for something. This will only go into how the fandom reacted and some of the decisions that really, let's say, twisted the knife. Voltron can be a good lesson on how you should learn how to plan things out. There are many ways of writing, and one of them is writing as you go along and seeing what you make and then making it make sense later, but that only works if you have a lot of time. On a show schedule, you really need to plan things out beforehand. or else you end up with a convoluted mess, or making a lot of mistakes, or make yourself, let's just say, write yourself into a hole. And the show did that with its queer audience, or at least the audience it attracted. They deliberately made advertisements that alluded to a ship that won't happen, that didn't increase LGBT character involvement while neither showing anything or only making mild hints about it. That probably goes over 70% of the audience who was watching, or somehow make one character fall into multiple horrendous LGBT tropes at once. To air the room a bit, let's talk about clans. It's the ship of the duo Lance and Keith. And even though the writers knew they would not be going that direction for the show, they allowed the audience to think that way, or at least couldn't stop the advertisement from at least using that to their advantage. Doing things such as labeling official content as clans or making suggestive scenes that can be seen as romantic, but is so vague and non-committal it can go either way. By clans, which is basically the entire attitude of the representation the show gives, non-committal. I mean, what else could you say about the elephant in the room we're going to talk about in a moment? Oh boy, you're not ready for this. Again, to clear the air a bit, this version of Shiro was not made to be gay from the offset. We know this because Allura was discussed to be an endgame romance for Shiro, which tells you all you really need to know about how the rest of this goes about. And when you read past interviews and writer's notes, it's a very apparent they were not sure how certain things were going to end up, especially with romance. In most adventure or epic stories, romance is technically the one that gets axed most of the time, unless it's basically used as shorthand for character development. And again, you can basically tell this is going to be a can of worms from just those statements alone. Also, the fact the writers wanted Shiro dead and the executives wanted him to live. Yeah, that's why he had so many fake out deaths and why the clone became a thing. To split the difference, the writers used Shiro as a plot device in several ways and gave him aspects so they could always keep him at the edge of death's door while giving him the possibility of bringing him back later. So yeah, like Kuran the clone. You did not know he had a name, did you? But again, that is focusing on the LGBT aspects and not the plot aspects of it, which is not exactly the right thing to do, but let's do it anyway because I'm a writer first. Shiro was in production time at least, made gay last minute. Probably have a gay character in the show because they were always promising to have an LGBT character but haven't had anything yet, and while Clance was proposed to be bi, we don't really get that much evidence of that, aside from hints. While at the same time trying not to get into trouble with the more conservative aspects of their audience, which is one of the reasons why gay characters are often not given much outside of hints. Look at you, Disney. What unfortunately happened was the bombardment of tropes when they were turning Shiro into the LGBT character of the group, which quickly turned tragic as they always had to put him at death's door. You're seeing the problem here? Yes, I can see nothing wrong about making your main gay character the one that gets tortured on screen, having his soul ripped from his body, very graphically tortured. I did mention that, right? Being cloned for vague reasons for maybe an army, having a terminal illness that, well, the showrunners outside of the show said was cured when he got the clone body instead of his regular body, was left vague for the audience so they could assume, well, he dies of cancer off screen at some point. Losing his boyfriend for a very stupid story and plot reasons. Well, must I go on? And speaking of said boyfriend, having only 16 seconds to mourn his death after a literal year of hype, putting him prominently in the trailer and advertisement, hyping him in Comic-Con panels. Ugh. Do you just feel the slap of the writers against the audience every time I say something like this? Oh yeah, and last minute wedding with a character that looks basically like a copy-paste of Shiro himself. just with darker skin. They actually had a nice idea of using one of the background characters for that, which wouldn't be necessarily good, but he was a reference to another show called Lacrosse, and the only reason they didn't do it was for copyright reasons, and that is literally the only interesting thing about this because everything else about it feels very wrong. Ooh, I feel physically sick. It's hard to imagine what could be a worse ending to a story about found family other than that, but the show seemed to try to do that with its final season. Where all of this happened to Shiro, where he was just shunted off to the side and basically was gimped from his main character status into side character. And basically end to the end of him as a character. With no real chemistry and everyone talking to him like a coworker and not like this person they spent a season looking for, trying to reach out to, and having a close relationship to Keith, who basically talks to him like just any other soldier from Earth. Again, when you compound all of that with him being your main LGBT character, you're kind of sending the message that they should be shunted off, tortured, or just will have a horrible life ahead of them, which is not good for our very suicidal prone group. And going back to the aspects of fandom outrage, they ran themselves into a perfect storm of tragedy and became one of the most dropped shows since Game of Thrones. And it came right before that hot mess. Yeah. And that's a great level of disappointment right there. They happened on the same year, by the way, so... whoopee. Which just puts on a factor of why? Let's see, what other tragedies we can pile onto this just to make the audience extra salty. Make it saltier than the Chicago hot dog. Oh yeah, we should make Allura die for stupid reasons because they didn't want to sacrifice the lions in case they wanted a sequel. Because they apparently wanted a death that wasn't Shiro because, oops, we made him gay now so we don't want to bury another gay. Making Lance a widower who spends all his time on a farm for whatever reason, spreading Allura's message. How? Keith not really having final development and just kind of sliding into Shiro's spot, taking all the development he probably should have gotten. Hunk and Pitch, well actually they turned out fine, were the only characters with actual development, as little as it was, they at least got something. Oh yeah, bringing back a character that was proposed as gay, never outright stated, after she died because again, buried gays. Man, they can make a cemetery with how many they're burying. And let's see, what else? What other tinge of disappointment they could be? Oh yeah, the characters splitting up after all of that. Because yeah, that's how you end a found family story. The characters going their separate ways and barely talking like once a year. At least that's what the ending gives us. Oh, that ending. Oh. I think that groan is about the best I can say about Voltron. It started out fine and very good, but then... In brief summary, Voltron wanted to be a show about found family, but slowly, and by disrespecting its own characters, betraying them, and putting them through the ringer, instead of making them stronger, made them sadder and tragic as it went on. Especially since they had to do a tightrope of keeping a character alive and wanting him dead. One of the classic examples on what happens when executives and writers fight over how the story is progressing, over ratings or marketing. It also used the audience desire to see more LGBT characters to basically bait them into keeping watch in case they get what they wanted. From the Shiro situation to Clans, to the other disappointment of all the characters in general. The show will forever live on in infamy as an example of what not to do with concluding character arcs and completely misunderstanding how to do LGBT representation right and not doing it just for brownie points. It will be a grim grave marker for what happens if you attempt queerbaiting in your own stories. A burning dumpster fire of false promises and lost potential. There, it's finished. I can move on from the Space Lions. Can I talk about magic systems now? how to use them in your stories, power as metaphor, how to make sure you don't make your characters overpowered with certain rule sets. Can we? No more naked giants. No more accidents involving teleportation or phantom baiting. No more shipping wars. I'm a poor magical boy. Please, no more queerbaiting. I just want to have some fun talking about... I can work with this. Hello everyone, the Grand Archive is here. Just giving you a little message to say I'm gonna get back on schedule soon. I just had a lot of things going on, a lot of procrastinating. Started DMing more games of D&E, which I do sometimes. But I'm gonna get back on schedule. Especially now I am feeling up for it now. Seriously, it took a lot of time just to figure out what I was going to say and what I was going to focus on, because I am definitely not doing those 3-hour videos yet. I do not have the rage nor the energy to have that much to say about something. Oh boy. I'm going to put some recommendations in the description for videos that talk about it for that long. And it's just some awesome videos about some of the problems Voltron had in general. And just some recommendations in general too. If you want to watch some other videos about some of the topics I talk about, or just good videos in general, I'm gonna put one for Kamui Miracle, who does a lot of Beastar stuff, especially with the new season coming out, which I might do a video on. And some, let's just say, YouTube channels with don't have big followings, just because I want to be nice and I want them to be nice to me in general. So favor of a favor sort of thing. But until then, this is the Grand Archive, signing off.